We've got a lot to get to today, including a little vaccine talk with Dr. Peter McCullough. Of course, he's a renowned published physician, was years in leadership position in cardiology, and is now the chief scientific officer for the wellness company. The book, The Courage to Face COVID-19, is he's a major contributor to that. You can follow him on X at P_McCullough MD. There's, Dr. McCullough has been the key source of truth throughout the pandemic. And then we're going to follow on with little Joe Allen. We're going to talk about transhumanism. We're going to talk about AI and how it's making us dumb. And I want to there's his book, Dark Aeon. And I want to get a little bit into Johann Harari and some of his predictions. And I don't know, I got feelings about that. You can follow Joe at JoeBotXYZ on X. The Joe Bot is capital XYZ on X and on Getter. And we'll be back with Dr. McCullough right after this.
Our laws as it pertains to substances are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. Hey, Dr. Drew here, and in honor of our 500th episode of Ask Dr. Drew and the compelling conversations we've had with experts from all sides of the political spectrum, today I'm joining 2 very different platforms at the same time, Blue Sky and Truth Social. Find them easily at drdrew.com/Blue Sky, as well as drdrew.com/Truth, and follow me on both. Let's find out together which one is more welcoming and which one is more tolerant of what I like to call a rational revolution. See you there. Speaking of rational revolution, Peter McCullough has been at the forefront of the rational discourse during the irrational certitude of the COVID era. You can follow him, as I said, on XP_McCullough, McCulloughMD on X, PeterMcCulloughMD.substack.com, and PeterMcCulloughMD.com. And then we'll have Joel in a little while. But Dr. McCullough, welcome back. It's such a privilege to have you, and thank you for joining us. I'm looking for an update for our viewers, the kinds of things you're seeing in the clinic in terms of the long vax, long COVID, how we've been able to distinguish between long vax and long COVID. And, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds because people don't want to, hear our therapeutic sort of thinking so much as to talk about, how you construct in your mind what long vax is now and the kinds of treatments you're finding effective.
Well, first, let's take the infection. The infection is now very infrequent. We are into the Omicron variant NB 1.8.1, so-called Nimbus, razor blade sore throat. You probably saw that. So some people are reporting a prominent sore throat. It's about 36%
oh my God, run
of
for the
strains.
hills.
The CDC says it's so rare they can't be sure on the proportion of strains now on their website. So COVID itself fizzling out. Long COVID persists, but I think it's progressively less frequent because the infection is less frequent. And so now we're really left with, the residual penumbra of problems after the vaccine.
I get long COVID every single time I get COVID. And I will tell you, I've seen 2 variants coming around Southern California. I got one of them. And the one I got was just rhinorrhea, just a severe runny nose and maybe a little bit of fatigue. And then I'm so familiar with long COVID when I get it. It's a very specific feeling. It's like a hollowness and a fatigue that I recognize it immediately now. And even though the acute infection was nothing, I had this week of post-COVID. I had it. And then the other, what I believe to be NB181 that's coming around here is pretty nasty. And I've been using Paxlovid for it because it gets people pretty sick. And guess what? So far, everybody has a rebound on the other side, and this rebound is extremely characteristic. It's the same rebound I saw from COVID 2 years ago when I used to use Paxlovid, which is a cough. It's just this nasty, nasty cough. It's not fatigue. It's not long COVID. It's just this cough. Weird. But in any event, talk to them about what we think we're doing with the long vax now in terms of clearing the spike and dealing with the coagulation issues.
Well, first off, we've published a paper listed in the National Library of Medicine, PubMed, and it's titled Risk Stratification, for people who've taken the vaccines. Very important paper. I take a careful COVID history, how many documented cases of COVID, and a careful vaccine history, how many different vaccine shots, because they both contribute spike protein. Here's the virus. The ball of the virus is a nucleocapsid. Here's the spike protein. This is the part of the virus that gets stuck in the human body after infection. And then the vaccines, largely Pfizer, Moderna, and Janssen, superload the body with spike protein. So spike protein, we've learned, is not readily cleared from the human body, and the body forms a reaction to it called an antibody. So Dr. Drew, you can measure your own antibodies against the spike protein as an indirect proxy of what your burden has been in your system. It's widely available through Quest and LabCorp. People can even order it themselves. I found a website called healthlabs.com in the United States. You can type in spike antibody, order it yourself, send it to whatever lab you want to, the requisition's right there, and get your test.
Interesting. And Susan wants hers. And then talk a little bit about the coagulation issues because that was when we first talked. We were in British Columbia, and you laid out your theories about that. I was fascinated. That was the first time I heard it, and I feel like that has been, if not entirely completely confirmed, largely confirmed.
I spent time today with a patient with a pulmonary embolism. That's a blood clot to the lungs. In my estimation, and I've directly examined now thousands of patients through the pandemic, it's my estimation that the risk of blood clots after the infection is equal to the risk of blood clots after the vaccines. And the people who've had more infections and more vaccines are at the highest risk. The spike protein causes blood clots, and it's physically found in the blood clots. So virtually all of us, 97% of us have had COVID now. I have 3 times. I think all of us are predisposed to blood clots. And when I do genetic analysis in my patients, at least half have some genetic predisposition towards blood clotting. So I'm worried about everyone and the risk of blood clots.
So that would be like a lupus anticoagulant or a protein C or protein S abnormality, that sort of thing. Because I noticed with COVID, I had a patient with lupus anticoagulant, and he died very quickly. It was one of the only deaths in my patient population, and it was wild.
Oh, boy. Well, yeah, this is what we know. So look at me. I'm Caucasian, Irish, factor V Leiden. Right, so I fit the profile. So there's factor V Leiden, protein C and S abnormalities, prothrombin variant 2021A. There's fibrinogen variants, and of course the lupus anticoagulant, which is an induced autoimmune factor. And we found that, we have different anticoagulation strategies, but I'll tell you one thing I've learned. The lupus anticoagulant, and hematologists agree, they need warfarin. Nothing else seems to work in that scenario.
I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. And we didn't know. I wasn't taking care of him in the hospital. He was down in San Diego, but he was a long-term patient of mine. And for all we know, he might have had microvascular clotting throughout his lung, or he might even had some who knows what, but he definitely should have been on warfarin or even possibly multiple anticoagulants. But yeah, Jordan Vaughn mentioned that to me too. I don't know if you talked to Jordan at all, but he's come to he's right in that same zone with you as it pertains to coagulation abnormalities.
Jordan was on my team just in the U.S. Senate a few weeks ago on May 21st. I sat right next to him. He's a very bright internist. He runs the largest vaccine blood clot center in the United States. And he uses, like I do, he uses a ton of blood thinners, which kind of hold the blood clot, at bay. But we've learned that we need to dissolve the blood clot, and there we use enzymes. The lead ones are nattokinase and bromelain. And recently the Japanese have reported that they add surreptase, lumbrokinase. These are oral forms of proteolytic, thrombolytic enzymes. And of course, the very big blood clots are so well organized, they have to be removed by surgery.
And you can use the spike support that you've developed. Now do we have a high dose alternative now too?
Yeah, so the original was spike support, and now we've advanced to ultimate spike detox, which combines nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin, as well as several minor ingredients in a high dose. So on the package label, 2 capsules twice a day delivers 8,000 units of nattokinase. And then, commonly in my practice, I advance to 4 capsules twice a day. We're talking Wellness Company Ultimate Spike Detox, and that delivers 16,000 fibrinolytic units. That is quite high from our original publications a few years ago when we were at 4,000, for the day. Recently the Chinese have published a study. Out of the box, they're using 10,000 units. We believe the safety limit on natto is about 80,000 units a day, so we're still well below.
So let's do a little MAHA talk for a second. And by the way, before I leave the stroke thing, I also noticed strokes in young people post-vax, and that should be alarming everybody. When I first started seeing it, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And it's just sort of, and the kids are being hospitalized. Oh, well, but it's just strokes, one of those things. You on birth control pill? No, well, who knows? Who knows? Oh my God, I'd never seen a stroke in a 30-year-old. Now I've seen quite a few.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. We're seeing just, cardiac arrest, myocarditis in young people. That happened actually before the pandemic, very rarely. Myocarditis is about 90% in boys, 10% in girls, but it extends through the range. Even in former Tampa Bay Bucks coach Bruce Arians was hospitalized for vaccine myocarditis in his 70s, a 1-month hospitalization. I have a young man, he's a professional athlete right now. He took the shots in 2021. He's in the hospital now with myocarditis. It's periodically he has to be hospitalized. This is not going away. And of course, the risk for stroke has occurred because of hypertensive intracranial hemorrhage. That happened to Barbara Orendello. She was at the Senate hearing. And now recently, the Japanese have reported the spike protein is found in the blood vessels in the brain where it's burst at sites of weakness.
Is there any of these, there's sort of a slow growing international consensus to your point of view, let's call it. Is that coalescing in some way? I mean, everyone's getting silenced in their respective countries. Is there any sort of unification underway?
Yeah, the safety concerns are growing. The medical community has kind of silently stopped taking the vaccines. They're not yet having grand rounds on this topic. Sadly, they're not taking vaccine or COVID histories in people being admitted with myocarditis or blood clots. And they're really missing the exposure. Right. Dr. Drew, this is very similar to, let's say, 1950. If you and I were to walk into Harvard at 1950 and say, listen, we're concerned smoking causes lung cancer. If we just said that, they'd say, listen, guys, don't worry. We got this. It's safe. Smoking's fine. We smoke, our patients smoke, our nurses smoke, everything's fine. And if we were the canary,
it is very familiar.
Right? And it took, 1964, Luther Terry, Surgeon General report on smoking. He calls the chiefs of medicine to Washington. You should see the look on their face in this film. He said, guys, I got bad news for you. Smoking causes lung cancer. So we're going to have that type, we live long enough, we're going to have that type of capitulation where people are going to learn, oh my gosh, we promoted these vaccines and look what happened.
I want to talk about MAHA and RFK in just 1 second, but I wanted to present a quick case to you. Patient comes in with nausea and vomiting. EKG looks normal, but enzymes are up, like high. Then after a day, the EKG gets a little weird. An echo shows a ejection fraction of 15% and global left ventricular kind of focally, but more global dysfunction. Patient leaves AMA because everyone seemed to be not understanding what was going on. Follows up with a cardiologist 10 days later, has a follow-up echo, normal wall motion, 60% ejection fraction. And that cardiologist even went, I don't know. But nobody takes a vaccine history or talks about COVID or anything. It's wild to me.
Yeah, that's a classic case of what's called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy or broken heart syndrome. So it usually leads with some GI symptoms. There's this dramatic change on EKGs and then global left ventricular dysfunction and prompt recovery. And what we've learned is some people have polymorphisms in beta-adrenergic receptors. It's the outflow of catecholamines, epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine. The heart responds poorly to it. Yeah, it can be triggered by COVID or the vaccines, but you know what? It existed long before the pandemic.
Fair enough.
Okay, we have no idea what you guys just talked about.
It's enough. Don't worry about it. We're just talking about a case of myocarditis.
I tried to follow.
But Susan, it's called broken heart syndrome. It can happen.
Yeah,
I got that part.
Yeah, it was debated whether it even exists for a long time, but it does exist.
Wait, because you're sad?
You're shocked. You're really grief-stricken, shocked by something.
That's it. So you want to get the history. It's more common in women than men, and you'd want to get the history. What was it? Was there some type of shock? Sometimes it can just be some food poisoning, that's GI that trips it off. But there is a characteristic GI and then cardiac presentation.
Interesting. I didn't know the GI part. So MAHA vaccines, there's a lot of get rid of mRNAs, period. There's a whole MAHA world that will accept nothing other than total removal of the platforms, and particularly the COVID platform. Where are you with all that stuff going on?
Well, in many ways, the train has already left the station. In a paper by Lalani, the British Medical Journal, we've invested globally billions upon billions of dollars in messenger RNA. Most chiefs of medicine around the world, they think messenger RNA is going to be the solution to future, human disease. There's a giant belief system. Messenger RNA for, vaccines for cancer, not just vaccines, but, messenger RNA treatment. So messenger RNA can produce any protein that we want to produce. Can you imagine that? It's like a molecular biology playground. The challenge would be to develop messenger RNA to maybe replace deficient proteins, create interfering proteins that are benign. And we need to understand with messenger RNA how to turn it on in the body and how to turn it off.
So I think I hear you saying that a reasonable or cautious, like with every medication, which are always dangerous, that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Is that my position? I'll tell you mine is, I don't like doctors being restricted from having access to anything that they actually feel could help their patient. The problem is we've gone through this period where doctors weren't paying attention. They weren't thinking in terms of risk reward. And we use dangerous stuff all the time when the risk warrants it. And to have an mRNA platform or even CRISPR is a whole different thing because we don't know the downstream effects of all that. I just want us to have back to the days when companies produced products that doctors then used if we thought it was in the best interest of our patients. We were not mandated to use things. We didn't have a political position when we used things. We weren't socially sanctioned for not or doing, or it's just we did what was best for our patient. So that's kind of where I come from the mRNA. So I worry that there's so much energy or pressure on RFK Jr. that they're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I don't think so. The industry is so large, Dr. Drew. Like giving an example, and the data well, that there is a vaccine for melanoma that's being tested as part of combination chemotherapy, in conjunction with Keytruda. Can you imagine a vaccine that creates an antibody, and the antibody specifically targets a tumor antigen? That's not another antigen in any other cell type. I mean, it could be a breakthrough. But I finished with a patient today. He is in research. We're using a lab in Germany. We have detectable Pfizer messenger RNA in his body now, 3.2 years after the shots. For sure. For sure. So people who took these shots, they've got it. They've got it at least long term now. And I've testified in the House last year, and I said, listen, I think we got 5 to 15 years, of concern here. This is very long-acting genetic material. And I think we should assume that all messenger RNA coming forward is going to be very long-acting in the body, and we need to be prepared for it. So I've said this. The platform should not be in clinical use in people right now, but in anybody taking messenger RNA, they should be in a research protocol.
And carefully selected. And when the risk is warranting it, not giving everybody in the world. That's just the fact that we did that. It's just, I can only laugh. It's the wildest thing that we did that. It just shows you how horrible things can go when you centralize authority with medicine. And I'm also worried about the cancer risks and things. I've been watching Patrick Soon-Shiong talk about natural killer cells and his very grave concern about that. I mean, for me, I just take resveratrol, try to improve I ask my family to do the same thing, to try to do the best we can for our natural killer function. I'm not sure his whole thing is a great idea. I don't know, but he certainly raised an awareness that may be one of the mechanisms of the increase in cancer that we think we're seeing.
Remember, you can orient your diet to be anti-cancer, Dr. Drew. You and Susan may want to, consider this. So very good data for curcumin and turmeric, for instance. Very good data for black sativa, cruciferous vegetables. I did a whole show on the McCullough report. I invited a person on. You may want to have him on a show. His name is Michael Gaeta, Gaeta. He runs the Gaeta Institute in Boulder. Probably the most, knowledgeable and great communicator on these natural topics. And, according to Gaeta, you can orient your diet and your supplements to be globally anti-cancer, just like you could to be, anti-atherosclerotic.
Or anti-diabetic, or testosterone or estrogen. But I take turmeric with curcumin. I do that. So I am persuaded there's a lot going on with that supplement. It's kind of weirdly the golden age of supplements. Things that you and I were not trained to do suddenly have really well-described mechanisms where they look pretty darn good.
Right. The average Indian in the Indian subcontinent consumes about 2,000 milligrams of turmeric or curcumin per day. You probably get it. And they do have population weight lower rates of cancer.
And there are things to be concerned with in terms of how these things are absorbed, and there's cofactors you can improve it. Anyway, bigger topic. But listen, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you being here so very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I guess we'll all be on the phone on Friday, maybe, to talk about new projects.
I wonder what Peter thinks about AI in medicine. How it can help.
Okay. We're gonna talk to Joe Allen in a second about AI and some of the
transhumanism
excesses and concerns and whatnot. But and let me just go right ahead.
Let me just say quickly, if AI could help assemble medical records and help present disparate sources of medical information, it would be great. But I want the AI to work for me. I don't want to be the data gatherer and then try to give it to AI to give me an answer. I think it has to be set up to the AI truly is, artificial assistance is what it should be.
Right, and not mandates, which if you love your electronic medical record, is loaded with stuff that they're telling us to do. This is more on high BS that same thing that brought us COVID mandates. All right, thank you so much, Peter. We appreciate it very much. See you soon. And again, do follow him on X, P_McCullough MD, and also PeterMcCullough.com, PeterMcCulloughMD.com. So Joe Allen he thinks a lot about these topics that we're going to get into now, and I know people have lots of strong feelings about it one way or another. You can follow Joe on JoeBot XYZ. The JoeBot is capital on X and Getter. JoeBot.substack.com. And the book is, put that up there. Dark Aeon. Caleb's going to put that up there. There it is. I
love his book.
One of the concerns is, we opened, I don't know if you had a chance to see this, but Dr. Zelensky was on there talking about Zelensky. Wait a minute.
Zelenko.
Help me, Susan. Zelenko. Zelensky now is in my head from Ukraine. Zelenko was talking about, he said some things in that tape that I'm persuaded are true now. It took me a minute to get.
You're always afraid to have him on the show because, we'd get censored every time he came on. But you were always like, this stuff's really out there. I don't know. A little extreme.
But now it's starting to look like.
You should have seen the text he was sending me. I was like, oh my gosh.
He came to some conclusions, just the stuff that Dr. McCullough and I were just talking about. He saw that in early 2022, and we were like, oh, maybe, I don't know, it seems a little extreme. Now it's like, yeah, that's what we got here. So Joe Allen's going to, what?
It's all true. It's like, he was like he's psychic.
He was, he did his research, and he had a great confidence in what he was saying, and it took me longer to get there. All right, so here we go. Joe Allen, when we return. The Wellness Company knows that taking charge of your family's healthcare is a top priority, and that's why they're constantly innovating to deliver the products and services to help you be rationally ready. Be sure to have the medical kit for kids on hand, whether you're a parent or grandparent. It treats 20 childhood conditions, including nausea and vomiting, allergies, asthma, inflammatory illnesses, even bioterror, God forbid. Listen, croup, ear infections, lice, it's all available in the pediatric emergency kit. You can also order the kids kit with an EpiPen should your child be at risk of anaphylaxis. And those EpiPens are carefully sourced and well priced relative to other EpiPens in the market. All 7 kits, each customized for a different purpose, come with a telemedicine consultation and a guidebook. Skip the scramble to an urgent care waiting room full of sick people and expense, or a pharmacy where there's no guarantee they'll have what you need. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off any medical emergency kit, or the supplements for that matter. That again is drdrew.com/TWC.
So I've traveled with my hyaluronic acid serum for my face, which I use every day. And we also brought along the active skin repair. Thank goodness, because I wounded myself. I'll show you the wound as we go. I don't want to pull the dressing up just yet. But the hypochlorous acid in this was used. I used it as an antibacterial. It's been proven as an antimicrobial. And the thing is healing beautifully, like better than ever. Like, it feels great. Here's a picture of what it looked like before I put the dressing on. I was delighted by the effects of the active skin repair. Hypochlorous acid is antimicrobial. It's been clinically proven, and this thing is healing well without difficulty. If you'd like some, go to dr.com/skin repair. I'm now free to enjoy my trip, not worry about infection, not worry about bleeding all over the place. This has been working beautifully, and I can get on and keep traveling.
I ain't Dr. Drew.
Dr. Drew.
You want to spend the whole session talking about Dr. Drew?
There you go. Even you call him Dr. Drew.
There you go. And I just want to remind people that TWC is going to be really ready. This is the kit tab. I reached in here for some dermatological materials yesterday for Teresa, which she left upstairs. Also, reminder that I can't, this is not... I'm looking at, you guys aren't rushing to get these products. I'm telling you, these are excellent. vshredmd.com, the Senosync and the NR Boost. These are two products I take every day. I carefully selected the ingredients in here, which is PQQ and NR, and then resveratrol and fisetin. We're going to put some videos out that explain why they're so important. I recommend them most strongly. So it's fatty. These are the things I take every day. Susan, you're not on the turmeric yet. You're going to get there. But turmeric, Senosync, NR, Boost, and Fatty 15. That to me is a longevity powerhouse. So, all right. So also, we just got a shipment of Paleo Valley's polyphenol rich, you have to use your hand there, organic coffee, and it's delicious. I was like a little bit like, oh, is this going to be okay? Lo and behold, it is delicious. It pairs perfectly with the grass-fed and finished bone broth powder, chocolate, of course. Susan put on ice today, right? Yell that out. Yep. With the chocolate bone broth, superior to coffee is superior to others. A little bit of cream she put in there. It was all cold coffee with bone broth. But it has special ingredient of organic coffee fruit extract, which is high in polyphenols. These, of course, are antioxidants that shield your body from stress, oxidative stress in particular. Store-bought coffee is often old and has lost a lot of the rich polyphenol content. Paleo Valley is sourced from, guess what? They think of everything. Organic, sustainable farms in Honduras and Peru, freshly roasted in the U.S. using solar power. Paleo Valley then test it for pesticides, molds, and mycotoxins. Isn't that Paleo Valley? That's them. Low acid and gut friendly, and it comes in a decaf as well. Get yours today with a 15% discount at drdrew.com/Paleo Valley or subscribe to get 20% off. That is drdrew.com/Paleo Valley. 20% for subscribe, 15% for your first purchase. Paleo Valley, drdrew.com/Paleo Valley. Okay, Joe Allen, as I said, can be followed on joebot.substack and also joebotxyz on X and Getter. Joe thinks about these things a lot, and I want to start, Joe, thank you for being here, with, is AI making us stupid? A recent study suggests maybe it is.
Drew, there's a lot of different issues that science claims to be able to solve that common sense would easily solve without a lot of lavishly funded studies. This is definitely one of them. The MIT study gives us some pretty good evidence that people who use large language models like ChatGPT or Grok or whatever to write for them don't think as much, and their brains don't show as much connectivity across regions as those who use their brains only. I think anyone who's ever watched a student who is Google-brained try to reason for his or herself knows that effect is very real. And now with the GPT brain, it's even worse. Incidentally, that study, the MIT study, they did have three groups. They had the LLM group that used the chatbot to write their essays. They had the brain-only group at the other extreme to write their essays. But in the middle, they had the search engine group, so that people were able to search as they wrote their essays. And, as you would imagine, it kind of fell square in between. You can kind of see a spectrum of cyborgization.
Cyborgization. Well, I tell you where I ran into it headlong is with medical students, where they're telling me they don't like memorizing things, which is the sort of first principle in medical education. You have to have this sort of, it's essentially a language in your head that you then gain experience with and apply it and use it and manipulate it and learn to expand your understanding of it by seeing it in its manifestations in the human biology. And their defense was, well, I'm just going to look it up anyway. Why should I memorize it? I thought, oh man, we are in big, big trouble. Because if it isn't first in your head, how else do you create that interconnectivity we call intuition to understand what you're walking? I walk in a room, I know exactly what I'm dealing with within the first 14 seconds. And there's lots of good studies that show physicians that know what they're doing can do that all the time. It's very common. But if you don't first put it in your head, I am gravely worried about how this is going to play out.
There was a pretty disturbing panel that was about 2 months ago with Peter Diamandis and Dr. Oz and a few others. And a question came up, how long before a physician who does not use AI for diagnosis is considered to be negligent, is considered to be doing his practice poorly. And both Diamandis and Oz believed within the next few years. I think that there's a lot of reason to suspect that even the best large language models, for instance, to search for perhaps a diagnosis or a remedy, that they still, even the best models tend to hallucinate, which means that you then would have to check every diagnosis that you got, which means that you could have just simply looked up the information yourself. I do fear, though, that as with students, as with people who work in customer service or any other retail, as people, even people who work as engineers looking up facts, and of course doctors, as that reliance becomes more and more obvious, that as people become more and more intensely bonded to these machines, that what we'll see, the singularity is an upward exponential curve of AI just going out of control. I think we'll see an inverse singularity where the technology could easily just stay exactly where it is, but as people get dumber and dumber, it will seem that much more advanced.
Oh my gosh, that's a dystopian idea. But I have a feeling, let me just defend Dr. Oz for a second, that the use of the AI model for clinicians is as a double check, right? I use it to this day as I'll do a double check once in a while with it. And it will be clever lawyering that will create the necessity. So people will do it now because people get sued when they didn't do it, so now they have to do it, even though they wouldn't really want to do it. But you're right, the newbies could start to lean on it and become more dumb as a result. And so let's talk about dumb.
I can do dumb really well. Everybody tells me.
Yeah. But I have the distinct feeling that we are becoming what I would call dumb. And again, we might be gaining capacity in other areas like interfacing with the machines or doing video games or, operating a drone from 10,000 miles away or something, things that have adaptive advantages, both in terms of survival and in terms of keeping your job. But when you think about how people are educated 100 years ago, I feel dumber.
There's a real paradox in the people who are really pushing for the extreme uses of these technologies. I'll give you one example. Brian Johnson, who I assume every doctor is watching him with great interest to see what his self-imposed experimentation is actually going to do to his body long term. Brian Johnson, the former fintech, I think it was Braintree, millionaire and now billionaire. So his self-experimentation is all about monitoring every physiological system with biosensors. It's about constant testing of his hormone and various other levels in his blood, constant genetic testing, looking at epigenetic effects of what he's doing, all this stuff, right? So basically he lives in a one-man surveillance state. And all of this is being processed by algorithms. So basically he's the recipient of this so-called AI wisdom, and we'll find out how good it is. Now, what's interesting about Johnson, though, is, for instance, on the topic of social media or on the topic of smartphone dependency, he's adamantly against it. He's kind of a health guru, and he's constantly telling people, log off as much as possible, keep your brain to yourself. So you can see, and there's many other examples like that, you can see that even people who want to give their bodies over to the machines, in his case, in the hopes of actual something like immortality, that they're aware of these horrendous effects on the mind that machine dependency is giving us, the smartphone and so on.
He's still going to get old. This is going to be not a good way to live. I understand he kind of enjoys it because he's into it. This is not living for the average person. And so this is something that is not going to go well, humbly. Doctors are really not interested in it because it's not anything that has real world application. And the things he's trying to stop aging, and that doesn't happen. You can push it back a little bit. You can't stop it. And he claims he can. And that is going to be dedicating all these decades to this. And he's going to be sorely disappointed. 85 is still going to be 85. He's probably never seen an 85-year-old before. So he doesn't understand what that is. So All right.
Drew, I've spent a lot of time criticizing Brian Johnson, but if there's one thing I got to hand to him, he's got a good sense of humor. He's always saying that he'll have the most amusing obituary in all history. I think he's probably correct about that.
Well, that, and I like what he said about the phone, and he's trying to protect his brain too, which is good. Even though he's not living a life, I mean, humans need to live a life in human society with other humans, making a difference. That is what health is about. And he's left that part out completely and indulging himself in his own biological well-being. Now, he could argue that maybe this will serve some function for others this one day, but I don't know. I don't see much there. So whatever. He's never seen disease. He's never seen aging. He doesn't know what he's preventing. How does he even know what he's doing unless he's seen these things? So in any event, let's talk a little bit about Johan Hari. My understanding is you feel like there's been misinformation about him out there. Tell me what you're thinking about that.
Well, back in the early phases of the pandemic, when I was first covering technology 24/7, first for the Federalist, and then, of course, at Steve Bannon's War Room, Harari was an outsized figure in tech criticism. So, and his books are in every airport. They're better than most airport books. I would definitely give it that, but they still have an airport book flavor. But he's a prominent figure. Of course, he spoke at the World Economic Forum 2018, 2020. And, I wrote about him back in 2021 about his kind of pro-animal rights activism, or at least stance, in comparison to his views on technology. Now, fast forward to, say, 2022, 2023, all of a sudden you see these snippets, these tiny little snippets of Harari show up everywhere on social media. So he talks about human beings are hackable animals. He talks about how COVID will begin surveillance under the skin. These are very scary things. And naturally, people were freaked out. What people, by and large, did not do was read any of his work carefully, watch any of his lectures in full, listen even 5 minutes beyond any of those scary statements to understand exactly what was going on there. So I'll give it to you real quick. Yuval Noah Harari is the Marilyn Manson of futurism. He is paid for by corporate entities. He's on the big stage. But ultimately, what his work is a critique of the system, in this case, the technological system. And it's dark and it's atheistic, and he is a demon, but he is a demon who I would say has a firmer grip on reality than most of his critics.
So that was a very, I feel like I went around a circle with you there. I'm not quite sure what everything you're talking about.
I can give you specifics real quick if you'd like.
Yeah, I want some specifics because I have some grave criticisms of him being in the position he's in. But go ahead, I want to be persuaded.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, he's either the Marilyn Manson of futurism or he's the David Attenborough of transhuman doom, meaning that he's gotten endorsements from everybody, Barack Obama, Bill Gates, so on and so forth. He was, of course, at the World Economic Forum and featured there quite a bit. People say he was Klaus Schwab's top advisor. I've literally never seen any evidence of that whatsoever, other than people just simply repeating it ad nauseum. Just take two examples.
Oh, no. Here we go again. We keep having these Zoom glitches. Caleb, are you there with me? I think we might have to restart.
Yeah, I'm fixing it.
Okay, hang on one second, everybody. It was pretty good up until then. That's all I'm saying. So
I'm here.
There we go. You had a little Zoom glitch. Yep. So go ahead. He's there. Whoop, still glitching. So we might have to start it up again. Let me look at what you guys are saying over on the restream and all. Doom Zoomers. What is that all about? Also, let me look at you guys on the Rumble Rants.
Zoom.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
The Zoom stopped.
Oh, I see. Okay. You guys are busy here. Let's see what's going on. What have you noticed about them, Susan? AI is... what's that?
Is he back?
I think he's back, but I want to look at the restream, the Rumble Rants first. Okay. Salty for freedom. I'm all for that.
Yeah, he's been.
Okay. Shall we just forget that I was strongly advocating for synthetic genetic nanotechnology years ago? I never strongly advocated. I was in a hurry to get it for myself and for my family because I thought it was going to be a good thing. I was wrong. I should have been much more circumspect. Interestingly, I took the J&J vaccine because I had a funny feeling about this new platform being more than we thought it was. I was advocating it for my elderly patients if they wanted it, and I discussed the risk reward for them, and I ended up being correct. I had 0 elderly patients die of COVID. I had the one younger gentleman with I was talking to Dr. McCullough about with the lupus anticoagulant, and that was a very special case. All my rest of my COVID patients survived. It was clear to me the mandates, there was not as sufficient data to have a mandate, and I was not recommending it for young people, even though we had to take it at times for travel, which was
when the overreach.
The travel was something that forced the issue. It's the only reason I took it is because of the travel. What's that, Caleb?
Drew, it's always so interesting whenever I hear these accusations about things you've said, because I've been sitting here for about 500 episodes now. Ding, 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 ding. Episode 500 is today. About 500 episodes. Yeah. And some of these things, I'm like, where are they hearing this? I have the professional headphones on, listening closely to every word, looking for clips, producing these shows, listening closer than almost anyone else would be. And I've never heard you say these things before. It's wild.
How's Joe doing? Is he back yet?
He's coming back. It looks like his connection is
you know what it is, Caleb? It's that people have this very, they hear what they want to hear, and they have very black-white thinking. And so I just urge people, just certitude is irrational. Do not be certain of anything. Be skeptical of everything, even your own thoughts about somebody that you're being skeptical about. Be skeptical of everything. So, Joe, we lost you right there at the essentially the WEF. So continue.
Okay, let's just start with quick background, what we're talking about. Yuval Noah Harari being taken out of context. Yuval Noah Harari, absolutely a kind of demonic figure, but a demonic figure who, again, has a tighter grip on reality than his critics. And I'll give you 2 examples.
Now, hold on. Yeah, give me 2 examples. That's where I want more information. Give me those 2.
Okay, so let's take his statement at the World Economic Forum. He's great at turning a phrase, hackable animals. What was he talking about? What he was talking about is if any government or corporation or fusion of the two have enough data, have enough biological information on a population, especially genetic information and its relationship to the rest of behavioral genetics, and of course, enough computing power, such as the massive data centers that you now see sprawling across the heartland of the country and on the coast. So what he is saying in that talk is that you have to beware of this power to be able to manipulate people. Once you know them better than they know themselves, you can then manipulate them with propaganda. That is what he was saying. They are hackable animals. Their brains can be hacked with sufficient knowledge and know-how of how to hack it. Now, it's ironic because people who take these little clips out of context have been hacked by clout chasers and social media influencers. I'll give you the second one, which I think is also really important.
Before the second one, let me just say but we've been able to hack people forever. I mean, that's what persuasion is. That's what propaganda is. Yep. We don't need to know every single thing about them to know that their cognitive systems are weak. So I don't know. It might just be around the margins. It might not make really a big difference than what we're already dealing with presently.
Well, I think that spying on important figures and mass surveillance have been put in place for a reason. And one of the reasons you spy on someone of great import is to learn their habits, their weaknesses, their strengths, learn everything you can about them in order to get a leg up on them. Digital technology, and this is what Harari was talking about, digital technology allows for an intensification of that and also a scaling across larger populations. And I'll give you the second example, bleeds right into that. You probably heard Yuval Noah Harari say that COVID represents a shift towards digitization and that surveillance is now going to go under the skin. I've seen this a million times. I've never seen any of the people who make it go viral actually talk about what he was talking about. He was speaking on a panel at the Athens Democracy Forum in about mid-2020. Brad Smith of Microsoft was there, a few others. And what he was saying is that the introduction of the biological surveillance of contact tracing and, of course, the swab up the nostril would allow for a kind of normalization of biological and biometric surveillance. And he says explicitly that if it's put in the hands of the security state instead of the medical apparatus, that it will be bad. He also says that the importance of it on a political level is that Stalin, who he says is bad, that Stalin was, he had KGB agents everywhere following people around, but you can't have enough agents to follow everybody around all the time. What you can do in the current regime is you can put sensors everywhere and you can develop AIs powerful enough to sift through all of that data and find dissidents. And he says quite explicitly that just like in the days of Stalin, when you never want to be the last one to stop clapping, right? But no one in the KGB knows what's going on inside your mind. With the advent of smart technologies and the constant scraping of personal data everywhere, you have, as a leader, and especially as a dictator, a very good chance of figuring out who is and isn't on your side. And if you are ruthless, then you also have tools to get rid of them. So again, that's what he was talking about with surveillance under their skin. I compare it to the fine people hoax that was used against Donald Trump. Everybody said he said that white nationalists were fine people. That's absolutely not true. If you just listen to his entire statements, he was clear that that's not what he said. Millions, hundreds of millions of people ran with it. The same was done with Harari. I think people would be smarter if they thought him through and hated him for the right reasons instead of relying on viral bunk.
And there we saw an algorithm error there that resulted in somebody. That's why I worry about these sort of technologies that are supposedly going to tell us whether people are lying or not lying. That's going to be very dicey territory. So have you ever spoken to Harari?
No, but he owes me some gold for all of the times that I've clarified his statements.
I am persuaded by what you're telling me that he's got some interesting things to say. I just didn't like *Sapiens*. I didn't like that book.
Boring.
It was so. What's that? Why?
Boring. Yeah.
Well, not just boring. You're right. But it was so detached from the human experience and what humans are all. How humans work and their biological reality, and there's the psychobiological reality of the human experience, which is completely, like, I could tell this guy does not know anything about that. He's looking at historical movements, which is interesting, but it wasn't even anthropology. It was just some sort of, and whenever think about how many grand sweeping theories of history they've never been right. Yes, we can learn a lot from history, and I value historians, but usually when they start predicting things, tends up not to be a great thing. And so that was my main. He presented himself almost like he was a biologist, and he was a million miles from that. So that was my concern about him. But I do like what you're saying about the kinds of things he's raising awareness of these days. What has got you presently most concerned? Are you worried about anything that we're sort of walking into presently?
Yeah, I think two different things. The first is just the open embrace of the kind of tech right by the Trump administration. That being first Elon Musk, I guess things are on the outs there, but also Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, and Alex Karp, Palantir, these sorts of things. I think that the closer the Trump administration becomes coupled to these things, the more durable the technological control systems that have been put in place for decades now, the more durable that they'll be. MAGA represented a real resistance to the sorts of censorship and surveillance mechanisms that were deployed by the Biden administration. Of course, MAGA is a bulwark against the kinds of fears that we would be something like the UK, where people are being monitored and arrested for what they say, or something like China, where people are being monitored and disappeared for what they say. So those sorts of systems, I think, should just be abandoned, and all dreams of taking hold of them should be completely rejected. But that's not what's happening under Trump. Trump is present with the Stargate project, which is basically was just a big advertisement on his second day, to the sweetheart deals with Palantir, to the close relationship with Musk. I think Trump, if he's not careful, is going to usher in the era of Trumpian transhumanism. And just the last thing about that, I think that the thing that really has depressed me the most is watching all the people who, under Biden or under Obama, were constantly freaking out about fusion centers back in the day, and that FEMA's going to come get you and put you in a camp and blah, blah, blah. And then under Biden, the World Economic Forum, Fourth Industrial Revolution, technocratic globalist, transhumanist, evil, satanic, antichrist system is going to get you with AI and injections. And then immediately, the difference between evil transhumanism and good American technology, it's about 6 months. And I think that just on principle, the people who on principle said that the rise of an AI surveillance state, or on principle said the use of artificial intelligence is a higher power or a higher authority on what is and isn't real, or genetic engineering, or any of the other sorts of things that go along with the Stargate project or Palantir, or any of these other sorts of organizations and individuals, I think that they should be ashamed for abandoning their principles if they ever had any.
I know I'm as guilty as anybody in terms of being naive about these things. I was my sort of prime mistake that I need to apologize for. I'm always looking for reasons to apologize these days. Was the Patriot Act. I was like, well, we got to security. I got nothing to hide. What do I care? They fine. Come on in. Look, put a camera. I don't care. And lo and behold, the government finds a way to use their power to excess. I mean, COVID is what woke me up to that, really, in such a way that our rights and privileges start getting eroded and then are quickly taken away. Again, speech being the one that was sort of most pronounced to me is like I can't effing believe this is happening. And we're sort of scratching our way back. Is there a way to persuade people that they may not understand the extent to which the government can misuse these things?
I think the point that should always be kept in mind, especially in a democratic country or semi-democratic country, whatever we are, is that the leadership is going to change. The shoe's going to be on the other foot. And in the same way that Biden's administration, the Department of Homeland Security, was weaponizing the Justice Department for political reasons, oftentimes against people who were completely innocent. I think of the J6 grandmas, or I think of the pro-life protesters who were called terrorists and investigated as such by the FBI. And just in general, the entirety, like half of the country, was being portrayed as potential terrorists. And Biden, of course, was working with tech companies, and the military with Biden was working to basically integrate AI and death drones and physical augmentation for soldiers and monitoring social media and censorship, all these sorts of things. That was all happening under Biden. It's not like the same system just rolled over to Trump, but the same powers, the desire for the same powers have rolled over to Trump. Not that Trump has really shoved Sam Altman and OpenAI aside, but he has definitely favored different companies and different people with different ideologies, such as Peter Thiel, such as Alex Karp, such as Palmer Luckey at Anduril. Those people have gotten a lot more favor under Trump. But ultimately, if you just look at the bare bones of what futurists are talking about, artificial intelligence, robotics, human replacement by both white and blue collar, and of course, tinkering with the human brain and tinkering with the human genome, all of those things are being blown wide open under Trump. So on principle, if those things, those are not the kinds of futures or even the kinds of strong forces that you want to see affecting your future, then I think that the second reason would just be on principle. We want to remain as human as possible. We want to push those technologies to the periphery, and at best, they're tools, and at the very least, they are toys, kind of distractions. But that's not what the people whom Trump is giving a platform to and giving government contracts to, that's not what they want. What they're talking about is something far more dramatic, from the educational system, through the medical system, through the military, all of it. Cyborgizing, all of it.
And Caleb, I know this stuff, you're much more attuned to these things than my naive sensibilities are. And I'm wondering if you have any questions for Joe or things you're worried about. I know this makes you uncomfortable and paranoid, but I'm wondering where your concerns are.
I mean, my concerns are with Palantir because it just seems like it's Big Brother. It's a corporation of Big Brother that's being pushed in, but because we have people that are kind of quote unquote on our side in power right now, everyone's looking at it positively. When all you have to do in your mind is just switch it. Just say, okay, if Kamala was the one that was president right now, would I still be for this? And if the answer is no, then I would really not think you should be supporting these types of things coming. Now, that's not saying Palantir has bad intentions. My theory is always that they see what's going on in China, or they see other countries, and they're like, we're going to be left behind if we don't make similar advances, that they see something's coming on the way 10 or 20 years from now. But this is America, and I don't really care. I think freedom is number one in America here. And I don't think they should be skipping all of these steps, jumping straight into let's do all of these surveillance just because Trump's in power right now.
You know, it's interesting. Palantir's been around for 22 years. They were founded in the wake of 9/11. They were largely given favor due to the Patriot Act and trying to assemble all these disparate databases. Their primary role initially was to organize data sets, mass data sets, and especially data sets from surveillance, and try to identify everything from terrorists to enemy combatants to illegal immigrants, these sorts of things, national security issues. So they've been around and they've been at this forever. Like this sudden discovery of Palantir it's good. It's very good that people are aware of this, but I think that it obscures the much wider and more complex system of surveillance and control. You have all sorts of other companies that are doing the exact same thing. Right. Palantir also had deals with, say, Ukraine facilitated by the Biden administration. They have deals with Israel that was facilitated by the Biden administration, and so on and so forth. So their use in warfare right now is being tested. Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir at the World Economic Forum of 2023, openly admitted, maybe he's admitted it many times, I don't know, but openly admitted that Ukraine was a kind of laboratory for military technologies, especially AI. Right. How do you identify an enemy out of a crowd? How do you track that enemy and then eventually kill him? Palantir has been at this forever, but what really I think got people freaked out is the integration of U.S. citizen data across different agencies, IRS, DHS, HHS, all of this. Palantir will be using or providing their platform in order to do this mass integration. It's bad that Palantir's doing it, but it's also very bad that it's happening. It can be very convenient for a lot of reasons, but the more centralized that information is, the more centralized the dossiers on each citizen become, then the greater possibility you have for that Stalin-like or Hitler-like or Mao-like or name your dictator, for that individual or group of individuals to use that information in what would be, I think, ultimately far more horrific than what we saw in the 20th century.
Yeah, I just think about the way China's doing it and building it and looking at it, and they've been relatively benevolent with it thus far, but people disappear for the slightest transgressions.
That's also where my mind is at right now. It's tailing onto what Joe was saying, is that this might be something that's going to happen no matter what. It might be that I'm the person that's saying, oh, if you put a bunch of cars on the road instead of horses, then everyone's going to get in crashes, everyone's going to die. And I'm thinking about, but that's coming anyway. It's going to happen no matter what, because that's how progress works. And so I want people to be resisting it so that they put guardrails in place, because they see that people aren't blind to what's going on. But at the same time, I also feel like, look, Palantir, they're going to make life so much more convenient if you just sign up to the national ID. I think this is all going towards national ID.
One of the things I'm learning from COVID is there's no satisfaction in being right.
Yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? So we just have to keep pushing, and it takes what it takes. And I agree with what you're saying, but let's wrap this up, Joe. Go ahead and respond to Caleb and give us your last thoughts here.
No, I agree completely. I think resistance is absolutely essential. And the argument from inevitability is fallacious. It doesn't really make sense. There's a million different ways you could use all these different technologies. You're not going to be able to use them all. You're going to have to make choices as to how, and you're going to have to make choices as to which ones. Nuclear bombs, the threat of nuclear annihilation has been hanging over us for decades now. We haven't pulled the trigger yet. Bioweapons have been available to us now. We haven't basically, COVID, but, Lyme, whatever. Basically, we haven't gone full, zombie apocalypse. So, yeah, the inevitability argument is just simply not true. Cars on the road, look at the difference between New Delhi and Los Angeles insofar as what you can do with the same technologies. Look at the difference between Los Angeles and New York. And I think, the conservatives of the audience are going to scoff, but I'm telling you, look at the difference between Portland, Oregon and Los Angeles. It's so much more pleasant to get around in Portland, Oregon than Los Angeles or Nashville, a city of equivalent size. So you can do it differently with the technologies, and you can say no. I'm in the middle of nowhere right now, and I'm telling there are people as far as the eye can see who still live cowboy lives. You can still do it, but you might want to keep some EMP cannons on hand for the death drones.
Joe on X, is JoeBot need to be capitalized, or is that not important?
No, you can just throw it in there. JoeBot XYZ on social media, and JoeBot.xyz. You can plug that in there for all my writings. And Drew, I really appreciate it, man. I think that you've got a very broad mind when it comes to all of these different ththings, and I appreciate your openness.
I appreciate it very much. We appreciate you and your thinking and raising some concerns. And if COVID taught us nothing else, that law of unintended effect is always good, is always healthy and doing push-ups alongside of us. And you have to really think things through. And so I appreciate you trying to do that, or at least to get people to slow down and think about stuff. All right, my friend, we will look for you on JoeBot XYZ on X. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers. So, Caleb, coming up.
Somebody on Rumble said Portland Pleasant?
Well, before it got all overrun. Okay, tomorrow morning we have a very special episode. We're going to talk to Professor Sam Vaknin, who is the guy that I heard Michael Schellenberg talk to, who was a really interesting psychologist who's sort of helps us understand why people are behaving the way they do. And we're going to get in deep on that, because I watched it all happen. I thought, what is happening to us? Remember me during the COVID going, when do we become so hysterical? Why the hysteria? Well, he's got answers to all that. And then Martha Byrne, then Gianno Caldwell to talk about his Violence Institute because his brother was killed. Gary Sinise, Jenny McCarthy, great names, great guests, many more coming. Feel free to make suggestions at contact@drdrew.com. And don't forget to support the people that support us. And I'm quite serious about these longevity products. I am red hot on that stuff these days. Don't do what, what's his name, Ben Johnson, the kid that's trying to live forever. Don't do that. Go take the longevity stuff I'm suggesting and the Fatty 15 and these things, and then go live your life and go make a difference. That is a much, much healthier way to approach things, humbly. All right, Caleb, anything on your front?
Nope, just excited for the early show tomorrow. That's going to be fun. And also very excited because it is technically our 500th episode of the Ask Dr. Drew podcast. And to celebrate, Drew, you just joined Truth Social and Blue Sky at the same time. So you just go to drdrew.com/truth or drdrew.com/Blue Sky to find them and go find the new profiles, and let's see which one is more welcoming.
No, he's working on that. He's working on that.
Soon.
So we just
have a channel.
Yeah, we have channels there. We'll post stuff there, and Caleb is talking about getting a way to do streams, right? Or we're gonna sort of video post.
I'm going to talk with him, I believe, on Friday, and so we're going to see if we can get live streaming over there as well.
Locals.
Great. And Susan, anything on your front?
I heard we can go up on locals too.
Great, let's do that. We've been talking about doing a special show for them forever.
Well, but now we can put the restream actually is
Caleb,
going over there.
You got that?
Yep.
All right, on it. And see you guys early tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Should be a really interesting conversation. We'll see you then. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.